there's the lady that makes sure we're recording. And Judy, I think if Rana is ready and the speakers are ready as well, we can start playing the music and the people.
Are you hearing that?
Yes, but it's quite. Can you turn it down a bit? Otherwise, we're going to dance.
And Judy, so we can start letting people in.
I just let them all in.
Yep.
So welcome everybody. Here's just some music to accompany you into this virtual room. We'll start very soon. I think this room is the virtual here and so we'll just have 1 more minute. I already asked all of you who are joining to please turn off your mics, but turn on your cameras because yes, it's virtual, but we love seeing people we talk and just have to have a better event.
¿Cómo llamaba?
La pantalla de bloqueo. Pero no sé por qué mierda ahora apareció, porque no había.
So if you could mute yourself, this would be extremely helpful. Thank you. And put your cameras on. Hello everybody, the music is down and oh no. Okay, I'm being told that actually my mic apparently is a bit soft, so I'm going to try it like this, and otherwise we're going to find another tech solution in the meantime. So hello everybody, my name is Renati. I'm welcoming you to our global rendezvous on the renewable energy, the global renewable energy and energy efficiency target, the second session. Our event name today is our collective push for a global renewable energy target, strengthening our voice at COP28. So thank you for muting yourself. So very quickly, many of you know us, but I think it's still good to quickly introduce who REN is. So REN Renewables Now is the largest global multi-stakeholder network. We bring together players from governments, industry, science and academia, and NGOs, all working together to accelerate and advance renewable energy. And what we do very much is enabling spaces where we can basically bring the diversity of perspectives together, which is really important because ultimately it's not only about a fuel switch when we speak about renewable energy deployment, but it's a switch and a change of the economy and society, and that clearly requires a broad support. As many of you know, and I think all of us, so I'm very excited to have all of you with us today, because I think our just so close to COP, our timelines and schedules are crazy. I think we're all like on 200%. And why do we clearly see this as a big COP for the renewable sector? Is there is really a unique momentum in history to make the climate talks renewable talks. For the first time, there has been a clear mobilization around renewable energy and energy efficiency throughout the years, pushed by the governments, pushed by COP28 presidency, pushed by civil society and industry. So the Global Renewables Alliance with a campaign, for instance. And what is important, I think, is really to harness this momentum, but also make sure that this is not only an ambition that is out there in the global space, I guess, but is really leading to the right enabling frameworks to triple the renewable capacities and double energy efficiency by 2030. So this event today ties into RENdezous' broader effort to come together as a renewables community at COP28. We have worked basically with the Global Renewables Alliance and also IRENA along as a strategic partner in the Global Renewables Pavilion, a strong collaboration with GRA, the Global Renewables Alliance, on basically the dialogue series, and really also in the objective to back up the 3X renewables campaign that has been developed by GRA. And I think, Joyce, you're going to share some more insights on this later today. So for this reason, we're basically organizing those events in the lead up to COP as part of the Global RENdezous, the Global RENdezous series. But we'll also have several events at COP itself. So now, I'm not going to take more time for the introductory remarks, because I'm really excited to have a really cool panel with me to learn more about how we can mobilize and how we can jointly mobilize and bring a strong voice actually to COP. So again, this event today is our collective push for a global renewable energy and energy efficiency target, strengthening our voice at COP. And I think this title already asks many questions, like what is our voice? How do we push? And what do we push for? So let me quickly introduce you the panel, and I think you will basically join me in this virtual panel here. We have Aggie Hall, who is the Global Campaigns Director at 350.org, an international movement of people working to end the age of fossil fuels and build a world of community-centered renewable energy for all. And Aggie, I know we had like many discussions with you, your colleagues, because 350.org is mobilizing around the campaign. So we're very curious to hear more about this. Second panelist, Joyce Lee, Head of Policy and Project at the Global Wind Energy Council, which is the industry association, the global industry association supporting wind power around the world. Joyce is also a member in the RENdezous Bureau. And today, Joyce, you're also representing the Global Renewables Alliance, which is basically the industry voice of all renewable energy sectors. And GVAC is a founding member of this. So hello, welcome. And last but not least, Stefan Singer, who is a senior advisor from the Global Global Energy Policy at the Climate Action Network International. I don't think Ken needs to be introduced, but why not? It's the largest CSO umbrella organization contributing to move to 100% renewable energy worldwide by mid-century. And the context, I think, is really equitable, sustainable development and social justice too, because you're a global organization. So I think, Stefan, I've never introduced you in such a formal way. So that's the first time for me. I guess so we're kicking this off. Maybe to all participants also, you'll have the possibility to join the discussion and the panel later on. So be prepared, have your questions, put them into the questions, comments, put them into the chat already, but also be prepared to be called on the open seat here. To all three of you, a warm welcome from my side. And I think to start with, we are really thrilled to have you with us because all your organizations, yourself personally, but also your organizations are really doing many things to mobilize around the global renewable energy and energy efficiency target. And my first question would be to each of you, if you could basically share a bit what your plans are at COP, obviously mainly linked to this mobilization around these targets. I don't know. Joyce, would you like to start?
Sure. Thank you so much, Rana. And thank you to the wider REN21 team for inviting me onto this great webinar series. As mentioned, we're really happy to have this strategic partnership with REN21 for the Global Renewables Hub Pavilion, which is going to be our kind of anchor area for activity at COP. As the Global Renewables Alliance, or GRA. So the technologies represented within the GRA include wind, solar, hydropower, geothermal, green hydrogen, as well as long duration energy storage. And it's been a bit of an evolution over the last few years in terms of us coming together. And in Glasgow for COP26, we started with a wind pavilion in the blue zone for the first time since Copenhagen. We extended that in Sharm to a wind and solar pavilion. And then following this, convergence of the energy transition narrative in more of a system-wide view and looking at how all the technologies are coupling together and working together, we started talking about creating this joint industry alliance across all 6 of these technologies. And that's what we're bringing to the COP space this year, coming together to cover all of the universal issues that affect the broad sectors represented under the GRA roof. So we're looking at permitting, we're looking at grid bottlenecks, we're looking at community engagement, as well as nature positive transition issues, climate finance, and so on and so forth. Lots of issues which I'm sure we'll dig into in the discussion today. But that is going to be the full 2 weeks of programming, and we're hoping to bring in lots of governments into our pavilion as well. Happily, we're co-locating this pavilion with IRENA, and that gives us a really nice foot into public sector discussions as well. So the plan is not just the public-facing events, looking at the range of policy enablers for reaching the tripling target, but it's also speaking with governments on a kind of business-to-government basis around how to clear market barriers on the ground and get renewables to ramp up in their country context. Just 2 more minutes on the campaign itself, because Rana teed me up to talk about that. So we did, as GRA and a lot of different partners, launch what we call a 3XRE campaign, so tripling renewable energy and doubling energy efficiency improvement rates by 2030 in September at New York Climate Week, with a big kind of curtain raising event on the Monday of New York Climate Week. We had more than 250 organizations across lots of different constituencies sign up to an open letter that was sent to world leaders, as well as the heads of IEA, IRENA, MDBs, IFIs, and regional groups like OECD and the African Union, to call for countries to converge on a tripling target within the COP28 cover decision text this year. And we totted up the market value, both listed and private market value of all the organizations represented on that letter, and it was more than 12 trillion in market value. So that was our kind of big moment to show that the private sector, not just in terms of renewables industry, but also across major household names like Unilever and PepsiCo, and Google and Amazon, we're really pushing together for this target, jointly with civil society, multi-stakeholders like institutions like REN21, WBCSD, the Nature Conservancy, and many other organizations. So yeah, happy to talk more about that and reflect how that will look in in our pavilion later today in the discussion.
Thank you so much, Joyce. And I think like what was very clear is like a strong message, entry points to governments, because ultimately they basically are the ones, the parties taking decisions here and pushing them. But I think also the other message I hear from this is like very strong messages also from industry and civil society, how important renewable energy is actually not only for climate reasons, but it's an economic opportunity and also an opportunity for society. And I think this is basically what we often hear, that we need to complement those narratives also. So maybe Aggie, turning with you after Joyce's intro on DRAs and GVAX activities, what are 350.org's plans? We know that you have launched already, right, a new campaign around renewable energy. Maybe you could share a bit like news on this campaign and also your plans at COP28.
Yeah, thank you. So it's a real pleasure to be here and to join this panel today. Yeah, so we are ramping up to COP, and we already have launched a big mobilization called Power Up, which is really calling for renewable energy and the phase out of fossil fuels. So we've just had a mobilization that took place across 64 countries. I think 15,000 people at least joined us offline to call for that. So we're really starting to rally communities on the ground, calling for an ambitious renewable energy target that we want to see delivered, of course, at COP. So that's a really important part of our work, is sort of bringing those voices into that space. And while we're at COP, on the ground, of course, we'll be running actions that will be in response to the negotiations as they unfold, as we continue to sort of push for an ambitious renewable energy target. And I think really crucially ensuring that this is delivered with a strong justice context. We don't just want renewable energy, we want it for communities, we want it for people who don't have energy access, we want it for people who are really grappling with the cost of living crisis. We want renewable energy within that context. So I think really uplifting those demands and pushing that forward. So we'll be doing some rapid response digital campaigning undoubtedly on the ground as negotiations unfold and announcements are made and commitments are made. And we'll also be holding a side event with our human rights partners, so namely Amnesty and CL, looking at the intersection between human rights and climate. So that will be taking place on the 1st of December. And we'd love to see whoever is at COP this year to come along and join us. And we'll be uplifting the work of our of the East Africa crude oil pipeline campaigning work as well, and sort of really pushing again for that sort of dual fossil fuel phase out and renewable energy target that need to go so strongly hand in hand. So that's really the kind of, in a nutshell, what we'll be looking at driving forward at COP28 this year.
Thank you so much, Aggie. I think very interesting that you mentioned the East Africa crude oil campaign, because I think 350.org also started rather in the anti-fossil, and I think today it's really very actively engaging in the pro-renewables part. And I think this is again bringing two pieces of the puzzle together, right? So thanks for sharing this, Stefan. Over to you. I think your main activities, but maybe you can also kick us off on, we have seen the mobilization around the global renewable target, global renewable and energy efficiency target. We have like some critical feedback, which we had discussed in the first event on unfolding this, that for the moment, it sounds like it will only be a pledge. What should our ambition be, our collective ambition, and how is Ken pushing for this? You're muted for the moment, Stefan. Thank you.
Holy cow, technology. Thank you, Rana, inviting me, as you said so correctly in the beginning. We're representing more than 1,900 CSOs, NGOs, not only environmental, not only developmental. We have face groups, we have trade union folks, we have local climate justice group, we have social justice groups, we have think tanks, academia, etc., etc. 1,900 CSOs in more than 130 countries. So we're growing significantly, and sometimes I do not know how we manage it on the secretariat, to be honest. So I cannot tell you what all our members are doing. We have a big spreadsheet where we know things, but I do not know how. I can tell you what we from the secretariat try to focus on. definitely the energy package is for us the key issue this year and will be next year. The energy package basically consisting out of 3 big components. The one is starting with is the fundamental phase out of all fossil fuels as a commitment. And not tinkering around with wording like abated, unabated stuff. This is all a delay of things. This is a fundamental precondition to have renewables and energy efficiency, not as an add-on, and they carry on with fossil fuels, but have that really as a replacement. The second thing is the renewable targets, of course, the tripling, and we have seen yesterday, happily, the agreement by China and the US to support the tripling of electricity. Unfortunately, they have not supported the energy efficiency improvement. This was the high-level summit in Sunnylands in the US. It's quite an interesting communique they gave out. There are other agreements on other things. I'm not getting into that here. But there seems to be momentum being raising also with the EU Council conclusions. I've been talking the other days to Brazil, to Argentina, to Uruguay, to Colombia, to Chile, to the Latins, but also to other countries, not only me, others as well. And there seems to be a momentum gathering on support for this renewable tripling of electricity by 2030. And the energy efficiency support is not that strong from a variety of reasons, but it's also there to some extent. We need to do some work on that one. And the fundamental thing, which came from many of these developing countries, and we have also talked to LDCs countries, to small island countries, and we keep on doing that, is a search part of our campaign, and that's the funding. There will be no agreement. Let's be very clear. There will be no agreement with support from developing countries if there is not a significant and massively increased public funding for developing countries' decarbonization. China has said they do not need the money because they are quite well, but it's public funding because private funding, private investments is very sketchy. Very sketchy. For various reasons, cost of capital, you know all these arguments, governance issue, it can only be solved by public funding going in there, significantly supporting the public institutions there with funding. And this is not only for hardware. This is for skilling the labor forces. This is for education, having people in the place who can install a solar panel on your roof. I had a call with the East African delegates the other day, and that was my friend Ushulu from Kenya, who said to me on the phone and said, Stefan, all the targets on renewables are wonderful. You come to Kenya. You can buy solar panels, but you must be an electric engineer to install it. We have no people here. No one can do it here. They need to be trained, right? That's the kind of issues, this kind of softwares are very important. And in context of that one, the focus on the just transition, just and fair transition. Again, societal work to make this transition to renewable energy efficiency, not just a tacky thing, but a thing which is addressed with and strong support of social justice. It's not only climate justice, also social justice. It's a big ask. Of course, we're always asking more than is on the table, on the agenda. It's our job as NGOs, but that's the stuff you're focusing on. Now what we would like to do from the governments is, even if we get disagreements on the renewables, it will be likely in the cover text, which is not legally binding. We're not naive about this one. What does it mean? If a big, wonderful target, it might take dust on the shelf because no one knows what he or she is doing. It needs to be translated into a national processes for participatory democratic processes to define national targets. And as necessary, adopt this and increase and amend the NDCs, the nationally agreed climate targets for 2030 and beyond. Secondly, it must be monitored and reviewed whether targets are appropriate in line with equity, in line with the 1.5C trajectory, and in line with the justice in the country. Is it adequate technology? The third thing I'd like to mention here is how do we deal with tripling? Does every country, every region has to triple? Or some have to do more and some might have to do less because they've done a lot in the past? We cannot decide this. But this is the work of the scientists and the academics in the region to decide that, again, in line with equity and justice, in a fair way and in fair exchange. So I will give you a short example from my context with the European Union.
Very shortly, Stefan, so that we can
I asked them,
hear.
what does tripling electricity as you support it for you mean in Europe? You have agreed on a 43.5% renewable target, including electricity, but not only. How is tripling accommodated there? Very loud silence. They have no clue. And I don't think they're the only ones. Right?
Yeah, and I think this is...
I think we need to work on that one. So last point, what we do, we have a daily press conference. We have Fossil of the Day, very important for us, where we highlight those who do the best to support the worst. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stefan. I think you one of your first sentences was what we'll do at this COP, but also next year. So I think this already shows that we'll need to have a long breath to continue pushing basically for this target. And I think you highlight some really important points on how do we really implement this? How are we measuring this? Joyce, Aggie, I would be really interested to hear your views on this, but also what your view is, how we can really collectively work during COP, but also after COP to ensure that basically the national determined targets, this process is happening, that it's being monitored. And also I think a very important point Stefan has mentioned is like about the inclusiveness. You see, like to what extent do your organizations also work and contribute on this, and what are the key levers you have identified? Joyce, please go ahead.
Yeah.
Let's make it easy. You jump in. I'm not going to.
Thanks, Rana. There's a lot to unpack there. So let me start with what the package should look like, and then we can come back to stakeholders and inclusion. So I think those who are following the discussion and the discussion has been gathering momentum over the last few months through SEM and then the G20 leaders communique out of Delhi and now to here, where we've seen quite a fair amount of political momentum, large economies and developing economies signing up to a tripling. But specifically what that tripling looks like is quite important. And Stefan has pointed out that the platonic ideal of tripling within a COP28 decision text is going to be non-binding. However, that is still our preferred version of having an agreement, because it sets an important baseline of consensus for future heads of state, future countries to work off, and creates more of an impetus for the UNFCCC to act upon implementation and mobilization towards the tripling target. There's a lot of buzz around having a sideline pledge instead of having this enshrined within the cover text, which we see as leaving too much optionality on the table for countries to either sign up to the pledge or not sign up to the pledge, and we leave the opportunity to put an important guiding star around renewable energy in the cover text to the side if we put too much emphasis on the sideline pledge instead. So I think keeping our eyes focused on getting this into the cover text is important, and ensuring that this happens in parallel with an action plan to actually keep signatories accountable to this. And I think those who followed, the Glasgow pledges of COP26 a few years ago, and in particular the pledge from some 39 countries and BDAs and IFIs to end international public finance on fossil fuels has seen that this system of sideline pledges has some weaknesses. There are some deficiencies here around accountability, around tracking, around the mandate to provide data and reporting on behalf of signatories. So definitely to ensure that there is a robust call upon specific parties, designate specific parties to take up the role and responsibility of reporting and tracking progress towards tripling. And that those specific parties ideally would come from an existing framework, an existing working group. So the Breakthrough Agenda, for instance, bringing together UNFCCC, IEA, IRENA, as well as having a strong non-state actor mandate, would be one option here, which wouldn't require the creation of a special task force or special working group. And they having ownership over numerical goals and power sector decarbonization would kind of be a natural home to embed a reporting responsibility. What that reporting should look like, I think should be the result of multi-stakeholder consultation. So ensuring that the metrics are robust enough to measure what we feel, what the wider community, renewables community, feels is important to look at. And I'm hearing social justice and climate justice and thinking about how we can start to measure this quantitatively and qualitatively. So it's not just about capacity installed, and it's not just about number of projects in the permitting pipeline, but looking at the kind of social conditions that would enable more equitable reaching of this target. Yeah, maybe I'll stop there and we can come back to the stakeholders afterwards.
Thank you very much, Joyce. Maybe a quick follow-up question here, because we had during the last rendezvous a representative of the German government who clearly said, like, the government will need industry and civil society to push and hold us accountable for. And I think this is maybe a question back to you, and then to Aggie also, like, how do we do this? Because this will also require mobilization. I think there's really one part which is directly linked to the COP process and how the work basically on the policy regulatory framework side, but then also this mobilization of other players. So I would be curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Okay, so I'll go first.
Yes, Joyce, and then I'll come to you, Aggie.
Sure. Yeah, I think first of all, we have to keep hammering home the point that this is possible, that this is achievable. And we can't give in to the idea that, even as the specter of overshoot becomes more and more a reality, we give up on our mission here. We can't treat 1.5 as a kind of cliff edge where anything beyond that isn't worth doing. So I think the actions that the industry are taking include having a report that we just published with the COP presidency designate and IRENA around the many enablers for reaching the tripling target, all of which are achievable in the views of the private sector, as well as the views of those other report authors. And they cover a range of things that we've mentioned already, from infrastructure and system operation to ensuring skills, capacity building, the kind of software of the transition are in place. I think regional collaboration is something that is going to be difficult to be driven just from political actors. And that's where I think think tanks, CSOs, private sector actors can do a lot to try to herd countries together on a regional basis around really important topics that could unlock further capacity, like grids, power pools, and interconnection and transmission build out, like finance, ensuring blended finance approaches are available, ensuring that investment isn't just flowing to countries with the biggest industrial policy packages and incentives and tax credits on the ground, and ensuring technology transfer, skilling and reskilling opportunities are available, and that there's cooperation on a regional basis, and we don't have a kind of hostile competition when it comes to building workforces and building supply chains.
Thank you, Joyce. Aggie, maybe over to you, because we also heard, like, okay, governments are actually only interested in being re-elected. So citizens and community and citizens-based push and asks, and maybe more than a push, is really important. So what are your views on this? What do we need to collectively put in place to really make this happen? I think the implementation, legally binding, but also this inclusiveness, because you also are working a lot in developing emerging economies.
Yeah, quite right, Rana. And yeah, I mean, I was thinking, Rana's taken my talking points because what you're saying resonates so strongly with me. I think, like, first of all, we really do need to see the renewable energy and energy efficiency target in the cover decision text to act as that North Star for countries to then implement and in their national plans. And then we need to see the commitments really delivered on and the necessary finance freed up for that, and for financial flows from the global north to the global south to ensure a truly just transition in a just way. And accountability is really crucial. And as you say, civil society plays such an important role in that, because while governments might change, our demands remain the same. We want renewable energy, we want it in a just way, and we want the phase out of fossil fuels. So that kind of consistency, that needs to happen. And I think the inclusiveness part that you're talking about is so crucial. At COP on the ground in Dubai itself, we want to help make sure that young people are front and center of the discussions around the energy package, and making sure that they're supported to be participating and making those demands for their future. But that consistency of civil society, that's what really, I think, will shift the narrative, will create the political will in the long term. Because if people are putting it on the agenda of elections, which I think people are doing, I think we're seeing that happen increasingly. The renewable energies and climate issues are increasingly on the agenda for elections. That is really fundamental, because there is no sort of one enforcement process around what comes out of COP. There isn't. So okay, then we really need to make sure that we're holding our own leaders to account, and supporting each other across borders to do that, and showing real global solidarity, because of course the climate crisis is a global issue.
May I, I have directly a follow-up question to you, because I think, so I see Miguel is here. During the last rendezvous, he said, like, aren't we parking our car or the elephant on the wrong tree by focusing on climate? And I think, like, very often we see, like, in the elections, climate plays a role, but very often it's like economy and other aspects that are driving basically political decisions. Governmental, the driver of the economy's jobs, etc. To what extent are you in your mobilization also tapping into other stories, I guess, to convince about renewable energy and that might actually lie outside of climate?
Yeah, great question. I think, there is a really strong intersectionality between climate justice and, human rights. So labour rights partners become really important to us. Human rights partners become really important to us, because when we're talking about upscaling renewable energy, we want to make sure that it's done in a way that ensures mutual prosperity for communities and businesses, so that it's not, repeating the kind of extractive models that we see from the fossil fuel industry. So that kind of intersectional approach and having a broad range of partners as we do this work is fundamental. And I think, when we're